This happened in October 1994 in Switzerland, when dozens of people were found dead in a fiery underground temple. Bodies arranged in circles, robes, ritual daggers, fire that had consumed them from the inside out. But this wasn't murder in the conventional sense. These people believed they were ascending to another world. They believed their leaders spoke to cosmic masters. They believed death was not the end, but a doorway. They were wrong. This is the story of the Order of the Solar Temple, a cult that dressed like medieval knights, worshipped the sun, and convinced its members that the only way to salvation was through fire. Subscribe now, because some truths are darker than fiction. Joseph Di Mambro was a jeweler. Luc Jouret was a doctor. Neither seemed destined to lead a death cult. Di Mambro was born in 1924 in France. He was a con man before he was a prophet. In the 1950s and 60s, he drifted through esoteric circles, Rosicrucians, Freemasons, spiritualist groups. He learned their language, their symbols, their rituals. And he learned something more important: how to make people believe. By the 1970s, Di Mambro had founded his own groups. Small at first, exclusive. He told followers he was in contact with ascended masters, cosmic beings who guided humanity from higher dimensions. He said he'd been a Templar knight in a past life, that he carried ancient wisdom, that the world was ending and only the chosen would survive. People believed him. Luc Jouret was different. Younger, charismatic in a way Di Mambro wasn't. He was a homeopathic physician from Belgium, handsome and articulate. He gave lectures on alternative medicine, ecology, apocalyptic prophecy. He spoke with authority, with passion. He made complicated ideas sound simple. Urgent! In 1984, Di Mambro and Jouret met. It was a perfect match. Di Mambro had the vision and the manipulation skills. Jouret had the charisma and the credibility. Together, they would build something bigger than either could alone. They called it the Order of the Solar Temple. The name alone did the work. Solar Temple. It sounded ancient, mysterious, powerful. It evoked the Knights Templar, the legendary medieval order that had been destroyed by the Catholic Church in the 14th century. Di Mambro claimed the Solar Temple was the Templar legacy reborn, that they were the true inheritors of secret knowledge suppressed for centuries. It was nonsense, but it was appealing nonsense. The order recruited carefully. They didn't want everyone. They wanted the right kind of people: wealthy, educated, spiritual, but disillusioned with traditional religion. People searching for meaning, people willing to pay for enlightenment. And pay they did. Membership required substantial donations, thousands of dollars, sometimes hundreds of thousands. Members signed over property, businesses, life savings. They were told the money funded the order's sacred mission. In reality, much of it went to Di Mambro's luxurious lifestyle. But members didn't care, because what they got in return felt priceless: belonging, purpose, access to secret knowledge, and ritual. The order's ceremonies were theatrical. Members wore ceremonial robes, white, red, gold, depending on their rank. There were swords, chalices, solar symbols, candlelit chambers decorated like Templar halls. Music, incense, invocations to cosmic masters. Di Mambro orchestrated everything. He controlled the rituals down to the smallest detail. He even installed hidden speakers and special effects in the temples, holograms, voices, apparitions. Members thought they were witnessing miracles. They were watching stage magic. But the illusion worked, because people wanted to believe. They wanted to be part of something greater than themselves, something that made sense of a confusing, meaningless world. And Di Mambro gave them exactly what they wanted, for a price. At the heart of the Order's belief system was a simple, apocalyptic narrative. The world was ending. Environmental collapse, nuclear war, spiritual decay. The exact mechanism varied, but the conclusion was always the same. Earth was doomed. But there was hope. Not for everyone. Just for the chosen, the members of the Solar Temple. Di Mambro taught that when the apocalypse came, the elect would not die. They would transition. Their physical bodies would be shed like old clothes, and their souls would ascend to Sirius, a star system 9 light years from Earth, home to the ascended masters. There, they would be reborn. Perfected, immortal. This wasn't a metaphor. Members believed it literally. They believed Sirius was a real place, that they would live there in physical form, that children born in the Order, especially Di Mambro's own daughter, Emmanuel, who he claimed was a cosmic child, were already partly Syrian. The belief system mixed Christianity, Templar mythology, New Age spirituality, and science fiction. It made no logical sense, but logic wasn't the point. Emotion was. And the promise of transcendence, of escaping death, of becoming something more, was intoxicating. Members didn't just believe they would survive the apocalypse. They believed they were supposed to trigger it, or at least participate in it. Their deaths wouldn't be endings. They'd be sacred acts, cosmic transitions. Di Mambro called them transits. As the 1990s began, Di Mambro's control tightened. The rituals became more intense, the prophecies more urgent, the financial demands more extreme. Members who questioned were ostracized. Some were expelled, others were physically intimidated. Di Mambro had a core group of loyalists, his inner circle, who enforced his will. They monitored members, reported dissent, made sure everyone stayed in line. Di Mambro also became increasingly paranoid. He believed external forces were conspiring against the Order. Governments, churches, secret societies. He told members they were under surveillance, that enemies were closing in, that the only safety was complete loyalty to him. It was classic cult psychology. Create an external threat. Make the leader the only source of protection. Isolate members from outside information. Increase dependence. Eliminate doubt. And it worked. By 1993, the Order had hundreds of members across Europe and Canada, temples in Switzerland, France, and Quebec, millions of dollars in assets, and a leader who believed his own mythology. Di Mambro was aging, sick, diabetic, and increasingly frail. He was also losing control of his illusions. Some members had discovered the hidden speakers, the special effects, the fraud. Defections increased. Criticism grew. Jouret, meanwhile, was facing legal trouble. In Canada, he'd been caught trying to buy illegal weapons. The media was starting to ask questions. The Order's secrecy was crumbling. Di Mambro made a decision. If the Order couldn't survive in this world, it would transition to the next. He began preparing for the final transit. September 30th, 1994. Morin Heights, Quebec, Canada. Fire investigators responded to a blaze at a chalet owned by a member of the Solar Temple. Inside, they found 2 bodies, a man and a woman, both dead before the fire started, stabbed multiple times. But that wasn't the disturbing part. The victims had a 3-month-old baby. His name was Christopher Emmanuel. He'd been stabbed to death, ritually, with a wooden stake. Why? Because Di Mambro believed the child was the Antichrist. The baby's parents had left the order. Di Mambro saw the child as a threat, a contamination, so he ordered his death. 2 of Di Mambro's loyalists carried out the execution. Then they set the building on fire and fled to Switzerland. October 4th, 1994. Curie, Switzerland. Police discovered another fire, this one at a farmhouse owned by a Solar Temple member. Inside, they found a secret underground chapel, elaborately decorated, mirrors, red fabric, solar symbols, and bodies. 23 of them. Some had been shot, others poisoned. A few showed signs of suffocation. They were dressed in ceremonial robes, red, white, black, gold, and arranged in a circle. Their hands positioned ritually, plastic bags over their heads. It wasn't a mass suicide, not entirely. Some of these people had been murdered, executed by the inner circle. Others may have taken poison willingly, believing they were transitioning to Sirius. But the fire made sure no one could tell the difference. October 5th, 94. Salvan, Switzerland. Another fire, another chalet, 25 more bodies. These victims were arranged in 3 connected chalets, positioned in star formations. Again, robes, ritual objects. Fire set from within using incendiary devices and gasoline. Among the dead, Joseph Di Mambro, Luc Jouret, Di Mambro's wife, and his cosmic child, Emmanuel. The prophet had led his followers to death, then followed them. In total, 53 people died in the fires of October 1994. Men, women, children. The youngest was 4 years old. Investigators were stunned. This wasn't a typical mass suicide like Jonestown. There was no single gathering, no final sermon. The deaths were coordinated across multiple locations, planned meticulously, ritualized, and the victims weren't poor or uneducated. They were professionals, architects, executives, a civil servant, a journalist. Wealthy, intelligent people who'd chosen to die for a belief system that promised them immortality on a distant star. The world struggled to understand. How does this happen? How do educated, rational people decide to burn themselves alive? The answer was uncomfortable. Slowly, over years, through gradual erosion of autonomy, through manipulation masked as enlightenment, through the human need for meaning meeting a man willing to exploit it. But the nightmare wasn't over. The later transits, December 23rd, 1995. Vercors, France. Hikers discovered the charred remains of 16 people in a remote forest clearing. They'd been arranged in a star formation, doused in gasoline, set ablaze. Among the dead, 3 children, ages 4, 5, and 6. These victims were remaining members of the Solar Temple. Some had been at the 1994 fires, but survived. Others were loyalists who believed the transit was incomplete. They gathered in secret, performed final rituals, and died. Again, evidence suggested some were murdered, shot or drugged before the fire, but others appeared to have participated willingly. March 22, 1997. Saint-Casimir, Quebec, Canada. 5 more bodies. A married couple and 3 others. Solar Temple members, drugged, burned, found in a house rigged with incendiary devices. One of the victims had written a letter beforehand. It spoke of rejoining the cosmic masters, of completing the journey to Sirius, of liberation from the prison of earthly existence. Total deaths linked to the order of the Solar Temple. 74. Spanning 3 years, 3 countries, multiple fires. And then, silence. What made the Solar Temple different from other cults? Wealth, for one. Most doomsday cults recruit the desperate and marginalized. The Solar Temple recruited the elite. These were people with resources, education, options. They chose to die. Ritual for another. The order wrapped everything in symbolism and ceremony. The robes, the titles, the secret knowledge. It created an identity. Members didn't just believe in the order. They became the order. Walking away meant losing themselves. And timing. The 1990s were apocalyptic times. Y2K panic, environmental collapse, the end of the millennium. D. Mambro tapped into genuine anxieties. He offered certainty in an uncertain world. But the deepest answer is simpler and more disturbing. Human psychology. People need meaning, purpose, community. When traditional institutions fail to provide it, when religion feels empty, when society feels hollow, people search elsewhere. And charismatic leaders offer easy answers. They promise secret knowledge, hidden truths, a plan that makes sense of chaos. The Solar Temple offered cosmic significance. Members weren't just people, they were knights, chosen ones, heirs to ancient wisdom. Their lives had weight, their deaths had meaning, except they didn't. There was no serious rebirth, no cosmic masters, no transit, just fire and bodies, and families left behind wondering how someone they loved became someone willing to die for a lie. Who were these people? Let's be clear, they weren't stupid. One victim was a mayor, another was a journalist. There were executives, civil servants, successful business people. These were functional, intelligent adults, not lost teenagers, not mentally ill outcasts. And yet they died believing they were ascending to another planet. How? Because belief isn't about intelligence. It's about need. And the Solar Temple filled needs that modern life leaves empty. Belonging, purpose, transcendence, certainty in an uncertain world. D. Mambro understood this. He didn't recruit with logic. He recruited with emotion. He offered what people were already searching for. Then he slowly, methodically, replaced their reality with his. It started small. Attend a lecture, join a meditation group, learn some rituals, feel special, feel chosen, then deeper. Donate money. Cut ties with skeptical friends. Spend more time with the order. Accept De Mambro's authority. Stop questioning. Then total. Move into order properties. Work for order businesses. Marry within the order. Raise children in the order. Let D. Mambro's voice become the only voice that matters. By the time members realized something was wrong, they'd sacrificed too much to leave. Their identities were wrapped up in the order, their social networks, their finances, their sense of self. Leaving meant admitting they'd been fooled, that they'd wasted years, that the meaning they'd found was manufactured. Most people can't do that. So they stay, and they rationalize, and they go deeper. Until one day they're standing in a room wearing ceremonial robes, drinking poison, believing they're about to be reborn on Sirius. That's how it happens. Bahordi, let's talk about the worst part. The children. At least 15 children died in the Solar Temple fires. Some were teenagers, old enough to have absorbed the ideology. Others were toddlers, infants. They didn't choose this. They didn't sign up for cosmic transit. They were murdered by parents who believed they were saving them. Parents who thought death was liberation, that burning alive was an act of love. Christopher Emmanuel was 3 months old when he was stabbed with a wooden stake. His crime, being born to defectors, being labeled the Antichrist by a delusional jeweler who thought he channeled space masters. The 4-year-old in Salvan, the 5-year-old in Vercors. They died in agony, believing nothing, understanding nothing, killed by adults who'd surrendered their judgment to a charismatic liar. This is what happens when people stop thinking for themselves. When faith becomes blind, when authority goes unquestioned. The children of the solar temple are a warning. They're what's at stake when we let someone else define truth. When we trade reason for revelation. When we believe there's anything, any ideology, any promise, any leader, worth killing our own children for. There isn't. The order of the solar temple is mostly forgotten now. It doesn't have the cultural impact of Jonestown or Heaven's Gate. Maybe because it was smaller. Maybe because it happened in Europe, not America. Maybe because we don't like thinking about the fact that wealthy, educated Europeans could be just as susceptible to cult manipulation as anyone else. But the lessons remain. Charismatic leaders exist in every generation. The names and ideologies change, but the patterns stay the same. Promise secret knowledge. Create an us versus them mentality. Isolate followers from outside information. Escalate commitment gradually. Make leaving psychologically impossible. And when the pressure becomes too much, when reality threatens to shatter the illusion, convince your followers that death isn't death, that it's transformation, liberation, ascension. The solar temple proved that intelligence is no defense, that wealth is no defense, that education is no defense. The only defense is skepticism, the willingness to question, to doubt, to walk away when something feels wrong, even if it means losing community, losing identity, losing the meaning you thought you'd found. Because sometimes the meaning we find is poison, dressed up in robes and rituals, promising transcendence while delivering only fire. 74 people died believing they were chosen, special, destined for cosmic rebirth. They weren't. They were human, vulnerable, manipulated by two men who offered certainty in exchange for obedience, who promised meaning in exchange for money, who delivered death in exchange for faith. The fires of the solar temple burned out in 1997. But the pattern continues. Different names, different beliefs, same manipulation, same result. Because as long as people search for meaning outside themselves, there will be someone willing to sell it to them for a price. And sometimes, that price is everything. The order of the solar temple is a warning written in ash and bone, a reminder that the most dangerous prisons are the ones we build in our own minds. That faith without doubt is dangerous. That surrender without question is fatal. And that sometimes the people promising to save us are the ones we need saving from. If this story made you think, if it reminded you to question everything, if it showed you the danger of blind devotion, subscribe to this channel. We tell the stories that history tries to forget. The cults, the experiments, the moments when humans chose darkness over light. Subscribe. Because the truth matters, even when it burns.